Welcome to HortTube, where we talk all things gardening. My name is Jim Putnam, and this is a Variegated Gardenia Radicans. This is Variegated Gardenia Radicans, a low-growing and slow-growing variety of gardenia that has beautiful variegated foliage. Variegated Gardenia Radicans only reaches about 18 inches in height and probably 3 to 4 feet in width over time. Gardenia Radicans is best used in zone 7 to 11, really in zone 7, especially 7A. This really needs to be a foundation plant and not out in open space. It'll almost certainly get bit in the wintertime on the occasional winter. Zones 8 to 11 pretty much could go anywhere you'd want to plant it. Variegated Radicans definitely grow slower than pretty much any other variety of gardenia. We might only add 3 or 4 inches to the growth on these in a single season, and that's mostly in width. They really don't put on a lot of height. Most of the growth is kind of outward. In terms of sun or shade on Gardenia Radicans, the green Gardenia Radicans I have a lot of luck with in sun or shade, not really deep shade. But you can kind of get away with some light shade on it, and it looks pretty good, really. This Variegated Radicans, I would be worried that it end up staying too wet in a shadier space. So I'd probably lean toward putting a half a day sun all the way up to full sun on this variety. In terms of where we would use Gardenia Radicans or Variegated Gardenia Radicans, we definitely use this as a ground cover. Frequently you're going to see these planted in spaces along a sidewalk in front of other foundation plants, someplace where you need something that's low and evergreen and also has the benefit of flowering, of course. These would also look great mass planted in front of another group of slightly larger growing shrub, maybe something that got 3 feet, because this variegation would really stand out in front of other green foliage or purple foliage shrubs. It also worked great as a container plant in zones 8 through 11. In zone 7, almost certainly if the roots were above ground in a container, it would be damaged in the wintertime. Variegated Radicans has this incredible variegated foliage that's this green and kind of off-white two-tone color. It's really fantastic, and of course it's year-round because the plant's evergreen. It also gets the same fragrant double flowers that the other varieties of gardenias get. It does not bloom as heavily. Gardenia Radicans does not bloom as heavily as other upright varieties, and the variegated one seems to have even less flowers than that, but it does get a lot of flowers, not saying it doesn't flower. It is a fantastic plant. Of course, it offers color year-round, so it offers something that the other varieties do not offer. You'll frequently hear me talk about leafy evergreen shrubs not wanting to sit in water, have wet feet. Especially true with gardenias, and even more so with a slow-growing gardenia like this one. We're definitely going to want to elevate this plant when we plant it. Even in sandier soils, I'd probably elevate this plant some when you plant it. And what that entails is digging the hole, the depth of this root ball, maybe twice the width. If you have clay soils, especially if you have clay soils with this plant, you're going to want to mix some sort of chunky material into that clay to allow it to drain better. We grow these in a pine bark soil conditioner, which you can get at most garden centers. You'd mix that 50-50 with the clay that you pull out of the hole and put some of that mix back in the bottom of the hole, maybe 2 inches of it, so that when you pull this plant out of the container, set it into the ground, it's actually sitting up about 2 inches. We'll pull the rest of our soil mix up to the edge of it, lightly mulch this plant. Do not bury it in mulch. Don't cover anything that wasn't covered when you got it, and allow it to dry out between waterings. Very important. Another consideration when you're planting Gardenia Radicans or Variegated Gardenia Radicans is they're a little more brittle than some other plants. I definitely would not pull this out by the top of the plant. Flip it upside down in your hand and let it fall out in your hand, and then flip it back over, because this plant would be easy to break in the process of planting it. Like I said, we're going to want to let this plant dry out between waterings for sure. If it's planted near a foundation, I would not probably water this plant very often at all. Would definitely not put it on a automated irrigation system ever. If it was planted in a sandier space, if it was planted in a coastal area, you might do some ongoing watering on it. But any place that gets kind of normal rainfall, rains more than once or twice a month, I just don't think you're going to have to do a lot of ongoing watering. If you ever did need to water it, saturate the entire space around it. Don't just water it right at the center. We want to encourage it to root out into the surrounding soil. I don't think you'll have an issue on Variegated Gardenia Radicans with it being root bound, meaning the roots probably won't be very matted into the container. If they are, pull at them some, so that gets them going outward instead of continuing to wrap around one another. Gardenias are acid-loving plants, so any slow-release fertilizer for acid-loving plants that are available at the garden center that you go to would be ideal for these. I would definitely do it in the early spring after the worst of the winter has passed, in something that will last 3 or 4 months. If you have your variegated Gardenia radicans for any length of time, they're slow growing, but they will get wider and wider and wider. So at some point, you'll probably need to prune it, but it's really easy just to give this thing a haircut all the way around. It's no problem. It probably won't ever get taller than what you want to keep it, but if you do get a crazy limb that comes up on it, really easy to cut that off. So anytime you'd want to do that, probably would be best after it flowers in the late spring to do whatever pruning you're going to do on it. In terms of insect or disease problems on all gardenias, they all get whiteflies. You're almost certainly going to have, if you have a lot of gardenias or even a few gardenias, at some point you're going to have whiteflies. There are organic and chemical-based options to control them. It's a little irritating insect, gets on the back of the leaf, and when you hit the plant, you'll see almost like white smoke fly up from them. It's a little winged insect. They don't do a significant amount of damage typically, unless this plant's tucked up in a corner and there's no wind on it, and then they can kind of get out of control and you do need to spray them. Like I say, almost anybody that has gardenias is going to experience whiteflies at some point. Deer tend to avoid gardenias. I'd put them in the very deer resistant category. The other issue you would definitely experience with variegated Gardenia radicans is if you put it in wet soil or a space that ended up staying wet or over mulched for some period of time, it would almost certainly get root rot. And root rot would just kill it. It wouldn't give you a second chance. So following proper planting of, elevating it and not over mulching it and not over watering it is very important. So what are you waiting for? Even you can grow the low growing, evergreen, fragrant flowered, variegated Gardenia radicans. Thank you for watching my video, and if it was helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for future videos. Also, ask any questions you have about gardenias of any type. Thanks again.